Church, and welcome. So happy you're here to worship with us today. I invite you to put your hands together, lift your voices. Let's praise our God in this place. We sing out, our praise awaits. Our praise awaits you with the dawn. Our souls awake to you and lift a song. Come on, we've seen the things. We've seen the things that you have done. And still we know the best is yet to come. There's more to come. Open the gates. So open the gates and let your glory come down. And open our hearts and let our worship pour out. Let it pour out. Here is all we need. You break our chain with sounds of victory. Come on, you're changing everything. So open the gates and let your glory come down. And open our hearts and let our worship pour out. Open the gates and let your glory come down. And open our hearts and let our worship pour out. Come flood this space. No one else could take your place. And come have your way. No one else could take your place. And come flood this space. No one else could take your place. And come have your way. No one else could take your place. Open the gates and let your glory come down. And open our hearts and let our worship pour out. And open the gates and let your glory come down. And open our hearts and let our worship pour out. Oh, let it pour out. Lift our voices and sing this out. Your love's so great. Your love's so great. Jesus, in all things, I've seen a glimpse of your heart. A billion years, still I'll be singing. How can I praise you enough? How can I praise you enough? You're the Lord. You are the Lord Almighty, outshining all the stars in glory. Your love is like the wildest ocean. Oh, nothing else compares. Praise in earth and sky, no one is higher. Our God of wonders, you reign. I gotta wonder you reign. You are the Lord Almighty, outshining all the stars in glory. Your love is like the wildest ocean. Oh, nothing else compares. You are the Lord Almighty, outshining all the stars in glory. Your love is like the wildest ocean. Oh, nothing else compares. Not to us, but to your name. Come on. We lift up all praise. Not to us, but to your name. We lift up all praise. Not to us, but to your name. We lift up all praise. Not to us, but to your name. We lift up all praise. You are the Lord Almighty, outshining all the stars in glory. Your love is like the wildest ocean. Oh, nothing else compares. You are the Lord Almighty. Come on. Outshining all the stars in glory. Your love is like the wildest ocean. Oh, nothing else compares. Oh, nothing else compares. Amen. There's nothing like the love that we have in Christ Jesus. And so we lift up our voices and we sing, all I have because of Jesus. All I have because of Jesus. Come on. And all this promise, one for me, when he paid the highest ransom, once for all, for my freedom. And I will boast in Christ alone, his righteousness and not my own. And I will cling to Christ my hope. His mercy reigns now and forever. And love will never lose its power. And all my failures cannot erase. And now I walk within your favor. Grace unending, grace unending, my salvation. I will boast in Christ alone, his righteousness and not my own. And I will cling to Christ my hope. His mercy reigns now and forever.
What can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. And what can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus.
Come on, church. what can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. What can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Nothing but the blood of Jesus. And I will boast in Christ alone, His righteousness and not my own. And I will cling to Christ my hope, His mercy reigns now and forever. What can wash away my sin? Come on. Nothing but the blood. Come on, church, we declare it. And what can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious. Oh, precious is the flow. Nothing but the blood of Jesus. How great the chasm that lay between us. How high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your very body began to breathe out of the silence. The roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Oh, Jesus, yours is the victory. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh God, you are my living hope. Come on, church. We celebrate because the grave could not hold him. Death could not defeat him. And because he is alive, we are alive. And we rejoice in him today. Amen. Our God is so good and so faithful, and he is here with us today. Will you pray with me? God, all glory and praise and honor and power belong to you. I thank you, God, that you have brought us into this place here today to come into your presence and bow at your feet. That you are the living God. And Lord, we can come here and Lord, we can lay our burdens at your feet, cast our cares upon you, and fix our eyes on our Savior, who is our living hope. For whatever we've come into this room with, God, we can surrender to you and know that we have hope and joy and peace in Jesus today. Lord, I pray that you would help us, Lord. We need you. So stir in our hearts, fix our eyes on Jesus, and have your way in this place. We love you, Lord. Thank you for loving us like you do. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. And it is in Jesus' name we pray all these things. And all God's people said, amen. You can have a seat.
Hey everyone, my name is Caleb, and welcome to Rock Point. If this is your first time here with us, we'd love to know. Stop by the New Here, Start Here table in the courtyard to say hi and learn more about how you can get connected. While you're here with us today, we encourage you to take out your smartphone and type in rockpoint.io. Here you can follow along with the sermon, take notes, keep track of upcoming events, join a group, serving team, or sign up for Rock U. Whether you're new to Rock Point or have been coming here for years, Rock U is the best place to find out about who we are and how you can get plugged in. Visit rockpoint.io and click on the Rock U tab to learn more and get signed up.
Rockpoint Missions is looking for volunteers to help reach a community in Mexico through a much-needed medical clinic. This is an incredible opportunity to build relationships with the people of the community, all while providing necessary medical care to those who have no way of receiving it. Whether you have medical experience or not, we would love for you to join us for our 2018 Mexico Outreach happening October 18th through the 22nd. Visit rockpoint.io and click on the What's Happening tab to learn more and get signed up.
In just a few weeks, we'll be launching our fall classes. These are offered for all stages of life, and they teach biblical knowledge in a variety of different areas. Classes are a great opportunity to dig deeper into a specific topic and connect with other people here at Rockpoint. Our fall classes begin on September 4th. Visit rockpoint.io and click on the Community tab to see what classes are available, to learn more, and to register.
Our mission here at Rockpoint is to point people to Jesus by loving them like Jesus. Thank you for being a part of this by living intentionally and through the faithful giving of your tithes and offerings. While we don't collect the offering in service, we do have boxes near all the exits, both in the worship center and the lobby. You can also give online at rockpoint.io. Let us know if we can help you in any way while you're here with us today. And be sure to connect with us on rockpoint.io and on social media to stay up to date with everything here at Rockpoint.
You asked for it. That's right. Hey, look, church is fun, right? Church is fun. But you know what? The truth is, to be theologically accurate, we're the church. So if this shirt is right, we're fun. And we are going to have some fun today. And you know what I do? I have fun. I am so blessed. I tell you guys this all the time. I am so blessed to get to be part of this church. And if you're new here, you found a great church, it's because just look around. It's filled with people that are just awesome, and it's fun. It's fun to be a part of this church. Now, a lot of people have really liked this shirt, and they want it, but there's only two ways you can get this shirt. One, challenge me for the throne. Or the more difficult, or actually easier way, is volunteer in our children's ministry, because this is our kids' ministry kind of shirt. So yeah, you'll get one if you do that. And they have like 5 different colors. I just like this, looks like Cardinals, so there you go. But yeah, but it's fun. And you know what, why I love being a part of here is what a great example was last week when we did that brick thing at the end of our Courage series. If you weren't here, we've been in a series on courage, going through the story of Nehemiah, where God called him to build a wall for God's glory, and we're right in the middle of God's called us to build some walls for what he's doing around here, and we're building a new building. There's a model of it out there, and how we ended this series and talking about the walls is we had an opportunity to start the first wall of the new building. And how many of you got to be a part of that with the bricks? Yeah. And then what we did is we ended with this opportunity that if you've made a pledge to our campaign, or you're going to make a pledge, and if you wrote a brick and didn't make a pledge, I don't know who you are, but you know who you are. Make a pledge. And what we did is we took these bricks. We went out there. We had a chance to grab one of these bricks. And right on the back side, which is the smooth, speckled side, not this side, this side. Not this side, this side. One thing, I love this church. Church is fun, but a lot of you are worse than your kids when it comes to listening to instructions. But the idea was to write the names of your family and then at least one other name of someone you're praying that they would come to know Jesus. Because that's why we're building the building. We're putting walls up so walls can come down between them and the God that loves them. And so that was an opportunity. And then these bricks are the ones that are going on the wall behind the cross. If you go look at the model out there, there's going to be another cross in front of the new building. And this is going to be the wall right behind that cross. And what we did it out here where you get to go out there and we put the wooden cross that's out there that is approximately right where that cross is going to be when this building is done. And we did the same thing when we built this building. The metal cross out here, we had a wood cross in that exact same spot when we come out here and do meetings. And now we're going to get to do it again. And we're basically putting together the first wall. And then if you got to be a part of this, you're going to be able to walk into that building, look at that cross, this is what it's about, and see the wall behind and know that you've written on the back of one of those in the name of someone you're praying for. And that is always a reminder of why we're doing it. Isn't that awesome? That's awesome. And now here's the deal. Some of you weren't here, that you made a pledge. You're like, I missed out. Or some of you have felt convicted by this and you want to make a pledge, or you want to be a part of it. So we're always going to have a way to do that. And that cross is still set up out there. We have a table, we have the Sharpies, we have some bricks. So if you didn't get a chance to do it with your family, you can do that anytime you want. You can go out there after and you can go do it. So you can still have a chance to go do that. So that is crazy. So thank you. Thank you for your courage. Amen? And here's why I know you guys took this courage stuff so seriously. because we asked you to turn in what you wanted to hear the next sermon series on, and you guys picked marriage. So you are a courageous group, I'll tell you. And as we go through this series, just remember, you asked for it. Over like 67% of our responses, almost 70%, had to deal with marriage. And so that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about marriage, but like I said, you asked for it. But as we kind of unpackage this thing over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about what does God have to say about marriage? Because if God is who he is, if he created all and he created marriage, he has something to say about it. And so we have to decide, do we want to listen to him? But here's what I tell you, and especially today. Today, I'm going to just unpackage the what of marriage. Like when you say I do, what does that mean? You say I do, what does it mean? What does it mean to say I do? What does God mean by that? Was looking, and what we're going to hear to many of you is going to sound crazy. It's going to sound a little crazy. It might even sound a little counterintuitive. It's going to sound like, wait. That's how to make a marriage work? That just doesn't feel right. That scares me. That doesn't seem right. And I'm just warning you, it's going to sound that way. But you know what? There's lots of things in our life that the way they're engineered to work is counterintuitive. You realize that. Like for example, just in my marriage, the whole time I've been married, every time we get a newer car or a new car, my wife always gets the new car. I take the old car, which I realized right there, guys, if you get nothing else out of the series, apply that and your marriage might get better right there, okay? You're the one that wants the hot ride, your dream car, and I'll just give it up. Give them the new car. And so I always take the old car, and it's usually always an old car, always pretty old, because we drive cars till they fall apart. I throw the keys in it, and I walk away, you know, basically. And so this time, I finally got the newest car I've ever driven. When I took our CRV, our old CRV, it was 4 years old. In my entire life, this is the newest car I've ever driven. Because before I got married, I bought old cars. This is the newest car I've ever driven. And I was excited because it has one of those computer things in it that tells you what your gas mileage is. And I loved seeing that the old truck I was driving got like 9 miles to the gallon. I was excited. I watched when my wife would drive the CRV. It's like it'd always say like 25, 26, 27 miles an hour. Miles per gallon and all that. So I was excited to get better gas mileage. Well, since I've been driving it now for almost a year, the best I get is like 23. I'm like, what, does this car hate me? I'm all mad. I'm getting, right now it says 21.8. I'm like, what is going on when this tank of gas? And I realized, why am I getting such bad gas mileage? And some of you, I guess it's not rocket science. Some of you, it dawned on me why. And many of you, like, if it just dawned on him, we have a dumb lead pastor. Because then I realized when you buy a new car, they have this sticker that says estimated gas mileage, right? And there's two numbers. Why? One is highway, one's city, right? So here's the deal. Which one's higher? That doesn't seem right, does it? Because when you're on the highway, don't you drive a lot faster than in the city? I mean, most of you, like, the speed limit is just a suggestion. That's the minimum. And you're definitely not going any slower than that sign says, right? So what is it about, in the last what I understand about the mechanics of an engine, to go faster, which direction do you push the gas pedal? Down. When you press it down, that means more gas. So why on earth, when I'm out on a highway driving massively faster than I am around city, do I get better gas mileage? I go further, faster, farther on less fuel. That sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? Until you understand the engineering of how engines work. And those of you who are mechanics know this, that your engine is the least efficient from 0 to 30 miles an hour. That's the worst gas mileage, is that acceleration to get through there. When you accelerate, when you go from 0 to accelerate, worst gas mileage. It takes more effort to go slower. So I realized my wife drives further distances and gets more, and we use that for trips, and we go on the freeway. That's why I got better gas mileage. I only go from my house to here and to whatever food I'm going to go eat and stuff like that. And so I'm always starting and stopping. I'm always 0 to 30, 0 to 30. Actually, and then the other thing I do different than my wife is that acceleration piece. If I'm at a stop light and it turns green and the speed limit's 45 miles an hour, I think the goal is how fast can I get to 45 miles an hour? And I don't know why. I'm driving next to people, and I don't want to be behind anyone. It doesn't matter if they're driving fast. I want to be in front. So you sit next to someone. It's like, for me, every time I'm in the front row, it's like, oh, this is like a drag race. And fortunately, I don't have a car that screeches. It's a CRV. I go, it takes off. And that is terrible on gas mileage. But it's counterintuitive. But here's the deal. So you're saying when you drive city miles, you're constantly hitting the brakes, you're constantly have to reaccelerate, you're constantly using gas, and in the city, you're basically driving in circles. On the highway, you're building momentum, you're driving further, faster, and you're actually getting somewhere. That's what we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks, this counterintuitive idea of how to hit the gas pedal and how to avoid the stops and the constant stops and starts that is draining so many of us in our marriages. Because you have to keep starting over at zero, and then you start to build up, and then you hit the brakes. You start to build up, and then you hit the brakes. How do we get on the highway to health? How do we get on the highway to health? And today, I simply just want to start off with one verse. There is one verse I want to read that lands, this is the what of what a marriage is. And it's going to be underwhelming to you. But I'm going to tell you, if you can learn to understand what this really means and apply this the next few weeks, we're going to talk about a lot of practical things when it comes to the way we're wired, our temperament. We're going to talk about how we use words and how we communicate. Because, a marriage is more like two countries coming together, and you got to learn what is the language. And you're going to bring customs from your native land of where you brought in. And we're going to unpackage all that. And that's all going to be really good stuff. Matter of fact, my wife's going to be here. So you're going to actually hear some good stuff rather than me. You're stuck with me today. But we're going to unpackage that together. And it's going to be really awesome. But if it's not filtered through the lens of I've realized what today is, it's just going to be putting Band-Aids over a gaping wound. That's all it's going to be. And so I want to unpack today with this one verse, and here it is. It's in Ephesians chapter 5, and it's verse 21, and here it says this. And further, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. That's it. We're going to get the whole what is marriage from that one verse. Now, to set the context, so you don't think I'm just tearing stuff out of context, context is king. It says, and further. Why is it further? Because the whole first part of the book of Ephesians is Paul, who's writing this, often starts off with the theological concepts. It comes from who is God and how are we supposed to live in the light of who God is? What does it mean to be a follower of Jesus? Why did God create us? How do we live out our faith? How do we really live life the way God built us to live? So it's all theological about who is Jesus, his love for us, how we need to trust him, and it's all the theology. And then all of a sudden he transitions into, okay, now let me take what we talked about and apply it to your everyday life. And verse 21 is the transition. And for the rest of this chapter, the first part, he basically says, I'm going to tell you how to apply this to the most common relationships you have. And it's 3 types of relationships if you go through this passage. And the first one he talks about is husbands and wife, how to be married. And what you have to understand when you read what's next, everything is filled. Everything he says after is how do you apply that verse? The controlling statement of this verse, that is the controlling statement for everything. So what we're going to look at next week, the next verses, we'll get into them when it says wives do this, husbands do that. Some of you have already read ahead or you know it or you've been in church and you're like, oh no, I'm hitting the brakes because it's going to sound weird when what we look at next week and we talk about our wiring, that's how to apply this verse though. And some of you are going to be confused, or some of you have heard the message that said this. What you read next is, okay, wives, submit to your husbands. Guy's the boss. Let's close in prayer and get out of here. But what does this verse say? Who submits to who? So you've probably heard, wives, submit to your husband. If you've been in church for any time, you heard that. Did the pastor ever read this verse and tell you, husbands, what do you have to do? Submit to your wife. Wait, that's not what I heard. I thought I was the boss man. We'll unpackage that. We'll see. But if you don't understand what this means, everything after is how to apply this. And there's 2 things there. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Meaning when I choose to submit to one another, I am being like Jesus. In other words, God calls us to be Jesus in our marriage. Our marriage is, God invented marriage primarily for holiness, not for happiness. Now that sounds morbid. That doesn't mean you won't be happy. But if I go after holiness, I will have joy. And joy transcends happiness. It gives you a hope and a confidence even when things aren't happy, even when they're tough, even when they're not working right. It goes beyond it. I have had the joy of being married to my wife for 26 years, and 7 of them were happy. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. But in the 26 years that I've been happily married, does that mean every day has been happy? No. But what I can say, for 26 years, my wife both have committed to trying to do what this verse says. Because this is what marriage is. So here's the big idea. Here's what I'm saying. Well, according to this verse, this is what marriage is supposed to be. It says marriage is supposed to be, put it up on the screen, there you go. Marriage is supposed to be a covenant of love, not a contract of expectations. It's supposed to be a covenant of love, not a contract of expectations. And what we're going to see is this, and then I'm going to unpackage it and you'll understand it, is contracts exist to satisfy selfishness. Covenants exist to selflessly satisfy. Get it? Contracts exist to satisfy selfishness. Covenants exist to selflessly satisfy. You'll understand that when we're done. So what do I mean by this? Well, I want to start with what it's not first, before I kind of really explain this verse. And what it's saying is, the first thing a marriage is not, it is not a contract. It's not a contract of expectations. Because like I said, contracts exist to satisfy selfishness. What do I mean by that? If you look in our world, when you sign a contract, it comes with expectation, all right? When I sign this, I expect you to do this. You expect me to do that, right? And it's an agreement. Why do we have to sign contracts? Because both parties are inherently selfish. We really want something. I mean, if we weren't naturally selfish, would we ever have to actually sign a contract? Wouldn't we just agree verbally? Hey, you do this, I'll do this. If you do that better, I'll give you this. I'll go, okay, fine, I'm good, let's do it. How does that work out? Not really well. Because we are naturally kind of broken people. And because of that, if we go into a marriage thinking it's a contractual agreement, which comes with expectations, all right, I'm contractually agreeing to do this, you're going to do that. The problem is we do that because we live in a world, but the world's way of doing contracts is to satisfy this idea of a selfishness. Now, to keep the guys involved, let me do a sports illustration with that. Think about the football season right now. It's weird with football contracts. You have a written contract, but yet every year, we just had our running back for the Cardinals, David Johnson, sit out part of the preseason stuff, the practices. Why? He wants a long-term contract. He wants them to give him a good contract now. You know why? He's in the end of a rookie contract. Well, think about it. If most of us looked at what rookie contracts are in the NFL, you would take that salary. And if you're just coming out of college, you have no idea if you can play the game, you're probably happy. It seemed like a win-win. It seemed like, hey, the organization wins, I win, I get to play. But all of a sudden, you were rated as one of the top 3 running backs in the game. All of a sudden, that minimum salary seems like a ripoff, doesn't it? So what do you want? I want to renegotiate my contract. They're getting more than I'm getting out of it. And so in its very nature, a contract is selfish, even if you love your team. David Johnson sits there and he goes, he didn't sit out all that. He says, I'm not going to be a distraction. I don't want my teammates to think I'm a selfish jerk, so I am going to come in and play. Because guys, you can't blame him. That's how the game works. Everybody innately knows the contract is about trying to get the best for me. And what they try to do is get the win-win, right? And that's what David, hey, he loves the Cardinals. He wants to play. The Cardinals love him. We want to take care of him. But you know what? In the end of the day, I want him to win. We want to win. But here's the problem with those contracts. You know that every time you sign a contract, if you've been watching sports shows, some of you guys are already turning it on to watch a sports show right now, and you can see they always analyze contracts. Who was the winner of that contract? They always look at it because the reality is you say it's for win-win, but here's the deal. Every contract comes with, hey, I want you to win too. But I want to win, but I want my win to have the capital W. Your win is the small w, meaning I want to win a little more than you. I don't want you to lose. I want it to be a good deal for you. I just want the better deal for me. And the truth is that's exactly how our nature works, even in marriage. So if we think of our marriage as a contract, we go in and we want the negotiations to work a little bit better for me. And that doesn't mean you don't love your spouse. Here's what I mean by this. Look, it says, turn to a passage in James chapter 4. I'm going to read 3 more verses for today, and that's it. James 4 describes where fighting comes from. So you end up in these contract battles and stuff because we naturally have a selfishness and we're trying to negotiate our best contract for us. Look what it says. James chapter 4. What is causing the quarrels and fights among you? Isn't it your mom? All right, you're paying attention. No, it says, don't they come from the evil desires at war within you? What is he talking about? These evil desires, these selfish desires. See, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's selfishness. So you can't be selfish and truly love the way the Bible describes love at the same time. And a contract is trying to do those at the same time. Contracts are, how do I express that I do care about you, but I need to get all I want? Contracts are an attempt to satisfy both ends' selfishness the best they can. And the problem is we have this war. And the war means that there's got to be good interest inside. So when it says selfish, it's not this selfish that says, I don't really care about you at all. It says there's a war going on. Like, I may want what's right and good, but there's still that part of me that wants what I want. And he's saying that that's where all fights truly come from. We are born into that in a broken world. Did you know that? You are born selfish naturally. That even though you have these other conditions, you grow up and we're taught, well, you know the Lord, you might have those other desires that'll war with. Like, I know I need to love. I know I need to sacrifice. I care about my spouse. I care about this. I care about, but I really ultimately, at the heart of hearts, care about me more. And if you don't believe me, some of you are like, no, that's not true. That's not me. I go, if you don't believe me, you know what you are? You're not a parent. If you had a kid, you would know what I'm saying is true. We are born naturally caring about ourselves more. And like babies, do they care if it's time for you to sleep? No, but you're like, well, they're babies. Their brain isn't formed. Well, how many have a 16-year-old? But oh, yeah, you guess what? Mom and dad, you're the same. We've just grown better at scheming and hiding it. Because that's what it says here. It says, you know what? You look what it says. Is you want what you don't have, so you scheme and kill to get it. We've become better schemers. We do better contracts in our life. We wage the battle against the selfishness, but we are no different than our kids. You are born naturally wanting more. And when you apply that to a marriage, you think, oh, I'm not scheming or trying to kill. I really do care about my spouse. It's true. You could really, really love them. But if you don't own the fact that at your very core, you want best for them, better for them, but you want best for you, it'd be like to use the Sports Illustration. You say, no, I care about my spouse. I want them on the podium right next to me. Me getting gold, them getting silver. Matter of fact, when we're running the race, I don't want them to get bronze. I don't want them to turn their ankle and fail. I want them to win. I want to be holding their hand as I cross the line just in front of them. They're right there with me, but I'm just a little bit ahead of them. That's what it's saying. We naturally want to do. That's the war. I want what's best for you, but I really, 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 at my heart, am more worried about me. I like the win-win. I don't want you to lose, but I want the capital W. And when that doesn't happen, it says we will scheme and kill. Scheme's obvious. I see it all the time in marriages. Passive aggressiveness, arguing. We'll sit out at training camps. We'll be like, well, if you're not doing that, I won't do this. Because you know what you're really saying? We need a contract negotiation. and I don't like the way the contract's going. And it says, I'll kill. And you're like, I haven't killed my spouse yet. Or you can't prove it. And the truth is that does happen. People do get to the level of killing. But Jesus said, even to have anger and rage and lack of forgiveness in your heart is murdering them in your heart. So when we get frustrated, and a lot of you are at the point, the schemes haven't worked, the fights have turned into, in your hearts, you're murdering each other. And it comes from this contract view. The contract view. Because look what it says. It says you don't have, so you scheme and kill to get it. You're jealous of what others have, but you can't get it, so you fight and wage war to take it away from them. That happens all the time. That's like that person's climbing out. You have people around you that are doing it well, and you kind of look, and even though you might not say it out loud to your spouse, but I wish my spouse was more like that. And then it says, but you can't get it, so you try to take it away. That's where you start to go, well, they're not all that cracked up. And the way to make yourself, to try to feel good about yourself is to say, well, they're terrible too. I don't want you getting out of the pit, so I'm going to suck you down with me. You know a real practical way what you do when it says you try to take it away from them? You know how many times I have talked to people that there's this person's in a bad marriage. They really get attracted to someone who's in a good marriage. and then there ends up being an affair. It ends up happening. And what's crazy is the person in the bad marriage that's attracted to the good marriage, they're attracted to the very things that they destroyed the second that person agreed to have an affair. You liked their faithfulness, you liked their love, you liked their care. Well, if you go down a road and you end up doing that together, you just destroyed the very thing you were attracted to. That sounds crazy. Happens all the time. It happens in this church. You know why? Because we're people and we're crazy, and that's what this passage is saying. We all are broken, and we naturally are selfish. And if we approach our marriage as, you know, the only way I'm going to be married is I got to just figure out how to have a good contract, you're never going to get to what God meant it to be. You're going to miss it. Because look what it says. He goes, yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. So because you got to go to the Lord for it. Now some of you are like, now you got me, Bill. There you do. I'm in a marriage that's been tough, and I pray all the time for my marriage. I pray all the time, and it's still not happening. So that's not true. God doesn't really give me what I want. But just maybe don't hate the play or hate the game. It says, verse 3, and even when you ask, you don't get it because your motives are all wrong. You want only what will give you pleasure. You know what he's saying there? He's saying even when you do pray about it, what you're really asking God for is a better contract. Be honest about the way you pray for the tough things in your marriage. Are you praying for or are you praying on your spouse? P-R-E-Y. Are you trying to weaponize your prayer? When you think about praying for your spouse, is it all about what you need them to do for you? Is your prayers for your marriage all about you being happy? That's what he's talking about. He goes, it's not going to work. That's not how it works. Because here's the problem with contractual marriage, is it's a false love. You know why? It's conditional. It's conditional. Contract love is a conditional love. Meaning, I'll love you as long as you do this. I'll love as long as you meet my expectation. I'll love you as long as this happens. I'll love you. And we see it all the time in sports. The beloved player on a team, everyone loves them until they're not producing anymore. And it's like, we need to move on. We love that coach. We're not winning. We need a new coach. We love that player. We love him. Guys, you get it? There's guys in this room right now that you are wearing a jersey with another man's name on the back of it. That's weird. Some of you, your wife is wearing a jersey with another man's name on it. That should be more weird to you. But think about it. You'll buy these, and you know what? What's the most popular jersey? The best player at the time. What happens when they fade? You want the newer guy. See, that you loved them. They loved you. Everyone loved this player until they weren't producing. And now you're like, oh, we're stuck with this overpriced contract. Everyone's like, is Zach Greinke ever going to be good again? Why do we pay him so much money? See what I mean? We love them as long as they produce. That's a conditional love. The problem is, how many of us, that's what you innately went into your marriage thinking it is? Here's the problem with that conditional love and that is when you contractually meet an expectation, it doesn't count. When you do an act of love in a contract, it doesn't count. You know why? It's the ultimate pass-fail. You either, well, yeah, you did that, but of course, that's what you're supposed to do. That's what's expected. So there's no extra credit, there's no all-star team, there's no good job, there's no Scooby snack. It's just like, hey, you know what? Why should I be happy you came home last night? A husband's supposed to come home at night, Now that's an extreme, stupid example, but what I'm talking about is we have an expectation that if you either pass or fail, you either meet expectation, but we get mad when you don't meet expectation. So it seems like if the contract's being met, we're just okay. But what happens when you feel like it's not happening? Now we're mad. Now we become historical. Not hysterical, historical. We go back and remember every time we've given and didn't get. We become baseball statisticians, folks. Baseball has a stat for everything. You're like, my sacrifice to being sacrificed for ratio is like 10-1. I'm leading the league. I'm the most sacrificial spouse on the planet. And you know what you're really saying? We need to retalk. We need to renegotiate our contract right now. Does that make sense? Because that's kind of what happens. We want that. And it really comes down to this idea of expectations. And what they say is expectations are actually planned resentments. See, when we come into a marriage with absolute expectation, I expect this, or I'm not happy, you're going to have a problem. Think about it. Ladies, those of you who get married or hoping to get married, you have an expectation, and one of them, just let me pick one. One of your expectations is probably, I want a romantic story. I want there to be romance in my marriage, right? That's what you expect. Guys figure that out. They're pretty good at romancing when you're dating. You just expect it's going to keep happening. You know what you didn't expect? Was a few years down the road after a couple kids. For you, romance was, you didn't expect him to come home, want to go sit in the couch silently, watching sports, shutting his brain off, going to his nothing place, asking you, is there anything for dinner? And then when you go to bed, hey, you want to have some fun? Church ain't the only thing that's fun. And you're like, really? Really? You didn't expect that? But guess what, guys? You had some expectation too. And ladies, I'm going to tell you something. Contrary to what you think, we expect romance too. We expect romance too. The guy expected to come home, be able to sit quietly on the couch, ask about dinner, and then have sex with you every night. See? He wanted romance also. It's a joke. That's absurdly exaggerated, but there's truth in that. What I'm saying is we have expectations, and sometimes even for the same word. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that, what an expectation is. Even when we say the same word, like romance, it can come out very different. We're wired really different. We can manage that if we understand that the expectation in the first place is the problem. Because, for example, I joked about the sex, but think about it. We're going to see later on. It's like, see, you have this expectation. The way a woman's wired is when you think about sex to a woman, it mainly is this idea of, hey, the woman, like I'll use a guy's illustration so the guys will understand, is it's a hard-fought drive that ends in a touchdown. And sex is after a hard fought, we've done this, we've worked through life, we've done the kids, we've committed to one another, you've sacrificed, it's been hard, and now we've scored this touchdown. Now sex is that end zone celebration and spiking the ball at a job well done. That's what sex is. To a guy, it's the kickoff. All right, let's get this game started. There we go. That's where we'll start. Now we'll go play the game. See, there's stuff like that. We can talk about that and sort through that, and you can have better conversations about that, but that's really not the truest heart of the problem, because then you'll solve that. But guess what? If you still think of your marriage as a contract with expectations, that might get solved. All right, Article 3 on the contract, we decided what the base pay is. Now let's talk about bonuses. Now let's talk about, you're going to find something else. And you will find out that at some point, especially with our own innate selfishness, we always feel we're getting slighted slightly. If you ask husbands and wife, I don't care how long you've been married, who works harder? Privately, secretly, and we will not give this back to them. You will hear from both sides. Everyone thinks they work harder. You just do. That's because of this innate selfishness that breeds expectation. It doesn't work. It leads to quarrels and fights, and it won't happen. So back to this idea of in Ephesians where it says submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. It's basically saying be Jesus. And you have to understand that what it's challenging our marriage to be is a covenant. See, where contracts are satisfying selfishness, covenants are about selflessly satisfying. In other words, where a contract is 50-50, meaning, hey, if you don't uphold your end, I don't have to uphold my end. Breach of contract. Covenant is one where you say, I'm going all in, no matter what. And a covenant, when I say it's about being selflessly satisfying. In a contract, you're worried about what you're going to get. Yeah, I'll negotiate, I'll give, but I'm worried about what I get. A covenant is where I focus on what I'm going to give. So what does it mean? What am I laying down? What am I submitting? Here's the bottom line. The way God intends marriage to work is, I submit my expectations in order to pick up your hopes and dreams. I submit what I want and go after what you need. In other words, the win for you in a marriage and a covenant, the win is when my spouse gets what they need, not when I get what I need. I pick up their hopes and dreams. And so my win is not when I am happy and I have my own needs satisfied. The win is when they get theirs. That's what winning is, according to Scripture. That's what it means. And only when two people do that do you get two capital W's. That's the only way it works. Submitting my expectations for their needs. Will I go after it? Now, let me give you a qualifier real quick before we shut this down, because going after their hopes and dreams and what they need never involves abuse. So if someone's saying they want you to, thank you, sir, may I have another, and stay in an abusive marriage, you go, well, you know what, you're supposed to sacrificially love me no matter what. That is scheming. Because the idea is what you go after for them is not abuse. You don't stay and take abuse. Even Jesus said, hey, I'll love you even if you run from me. If you get involved in stuff, we're not going to be fellowshipping very much. There are boundaries, don't get me wrong. But I'm saying in the day-to-day relationship that hasn't gone over into this world, but it's just the idea that we're always unhappy, we're always fighting. The way you correct is you say, hey, my job, my win is when I go after what you need. Instead of sitting there thinking about what kind of wife, if you're not married, instead of thinking about if you're a guy, what kind of wife do I want, you need to spend more time figuring out what kind of husband you're supposed to be, and vice versa. And go after that. And now I get it. That's the counterintuitive part. So you're saying that, and I do that regardless of if they go after my hopes the same way? Yes. You're like, well, now that sounds weird. Here's the counterintuitive. That sounds like it won't work. You know what that sounds like? That sounds like I'm going to do a lot of giving and not a lot of getting. And that's going to be a depressing life. That sounds crazy. Matter of fact, a lot of you are like, maybe that works for someone else, but you know what? You don't know my spouse. If you look up crazy on Wikipedia, their picture is right there. And they're crazy selfish. They're not abusive. They just don't care. They care about themselves. And if I go do that, I'm going to be giving. I'm going to be doing what they want, and I'm going to get nothing out of this. You don't get it. It's like so crazy. But can I just tell you something? That was the point of marriage. What he says out of reverence for Christ, it says marriage is supposed to help us understand who Jesus is. Marriage is supposed to be a chance for us to be Jesus for someone and see Jesus in someone. Marriage is supposed to be like his relationship with us. It's a visual picture. Marriage is about holiness more than happiness, but that brings a joy, not just temporary happiness. Marriage is supposed to picture Jesus, and Jesus even described his relationship with us as the church in marriage terms. You know what he said? He's the bridegroom. We are the bride, right? The church is the bride of Christ. And in that relationship, in that marriage, isn't one of them really crazy? Isn't one of them in that relationship the person that's absolutely unfaithful all the time? Isn't there one of them the one that says, hey, once a week I might come and listen a little bit and raise my hand and sing a song? That's the equivalent of I'll bring flowers and say I love you, but the rest of the week I'm not going to do anything you want me to do. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. One of us in that relationship is selfish and self-centered and unfaithful and unloyal and unloving so much, and one is absolutely 100% faithful to the point of even in our unfaithfulness, he says, I am going to die for you. Which one is which in that story? Who's the faithful one? Jesus. Who's crazy? We are. You're called to be Jesus. We're called to love crazy with a crazy love. And here's why it's counterintuitive. You think, well, that's just going to make life horrible. If anything, if you're single, I'd probably just talk you out of even trying to get married. You realize if you're in a tough time in your marriage where it feels like the contract isn't going well, you realize that kind of covenantal love is the only thing that'll ever get you to the better place. It's your only hope. It's your only hope. Because the contract thing will never get you happy. And that's what many of you have done. You've gone to counseling, and it gets better for a little while. Because you know why? You get an arbiter. You do contract arbitration. You talk, and you come to a new agreement. Okay, I think this contract will be a little bit better. And then you leave, and you start doing the contract. But eventually the selfishness comes back in, and you fight again. It'll never work if you don't submit to one another. That's how God created relationships to work. So the question is, will you listen? Will you have the courage to say, I'm going to submit. I'm going to put down my expectations and consider a win by going after their hopes and dreams. And if you've been married for more than 30 minutes, you probably know, without being told, the deepest hopes of your spouse's heart. And if you don't, you probably have communication problems. That'd be a good place to start. We'll talk about that. Because in the end, can I do that? Will I do that? Because you know what it reminds me of is ultimately there is one key that'll enable you to do this. You will never submit to one another if you haven't submitted to Jesus. If you don't submit your life and will to that of Jesus's, it'll never work. Because you just won't trust him. You won't listen to him. You got to submit to him first. And when I think about this, I think about growing up. It kind of reminds me of the absurdity of how many of us act in this moment. Well, it just sounds counterintuitive. I don't know if I can do this. I'm really scared of really loving my spouse and maybe not getting anything in return. I'm terrified about it. I get it. It sounds weird. But man, when I was growing up, my dad taught me how to pitch. You might not know my dad. My dad was a great pitcher. He signed a professional contract before he was even 17. World War II is the reason you never heard of him. But he was good. And he taught me how to pitch growing up. And when I'd grow up and I'd get kind of stuck, it wasn't working right for me, all my life, even off into college. This happened the last time in college. The last time I pitched was as a college pitcher. I would occasionally get into some kind of funk and a rut, and I'd call him up, hey, Dad, can you help me? And he would come and start to try to work me. And bear in mind, I asked for it. I asked him for his help. And he would come and watch, and then he'd say, okay, here's what's going on. Because he knew me, and he knew pitching. And yet, if he told me to do something that sounded counterintuitive, I go, that doesn't sound right. And I'd argue with him a little bit. He goes, just try it. So then you throw it a few pitches, and whenever you try something new that doesn't sound right to you, it's awkward. And I go, this feels awkward, doesn't feel right. And I go, I think this is going to work in the game. He goes, you just got to commit. You just got to keep doing it. You give it time. Watch. You're not. And I want to go back to the other way. And he goes, how's that working for you? It's not going to work. This is your only hope. You got to trust me. And next thing you know, it's like I would start fighting with them. And then I had a son just like me. So what goes around comes around. And so then we're fighting. And I'm actually fighting with the guy who I asked to come help me with my pitching, who knows pitching better than me and knows me my whole life. And now I'm arguing about how I can't do that. That's not going to work. Maybe in principle that works for other people, but that's not going to work for me. Can't we try this? And I wanted something else. And he would argue and argue. Finally, we get into this point of the argument that my dad, the cross I had to bear, the burden of the father I had, was he always had the greatest shutdown comeback ever to these arguments. He would finally get so fed up, he goes, son, who struck out Ted Williams? And who's arguing with the guy who struck out Ted Williams? Now, maybe not a lot of baseball fans in this room. Ted Williams is considered the greatest hitter of all time. Greatest hitter of all time. And my dad, when he was 17 years old, struck him out twice in the same game. In a season, Ted Williams only struck out 11 times all year. So when he said who struck out Ted Williams, what he was saying is, what do you know about this game compared to me? I have been at the peak and the highest of the highest. I was up there with the greats. He didn't see that to be arrogant. What he's trying to do is absurdly put me in a position to realize you asked me for my help because of who I am and the fact that I know this game. And I've been a place you've never been. You've been a place I never got to. And he says, why are you arguing? Who did this? And who's arguing with the one who did this? I am telling you, that sounds weird, but that is what many of you are going to walk out of this room and you're already doing it in your heart right now. Who created the universe? Who created you? Who created your spouse? Who created marriage? And who wants to sit there struggling in failure and argue with the one who created it all? You know why I would argue with my dad? I was scared, and it felt weird. Some of you are going to wrestle and argue with this because you're scared. That's okay. But what you have to do this week, my challenge, and I'm done, is just decide in your heart, is God who he says he is? Did he do what he said he did? Did he make you? Did he create marriage? And he has something to say about it. And if he does, are you going to actually listen to him? Or are you going to keep arguing with the one who created you and marriage? It's up to you. Because if you can't submit to him, everything we're going to talk about the rest of this time is never going to truly work. It might make things feel better for a while, but it'll never get you to what marriage is supposed to be. And just remember, you asked for this. Father God, I thank you, Lord. I thank you that you do care for us and you love us. And Lord, that when we look at marriage, we thought it was this contract thing where I give a little and I get a lot. And it was really about my own pleasure and my own fulfillment. But Lord, that's not what it's about. It's about a picture of you. You've challenged us to covenant, to go 100% all in loving someone like you loved us. And Lord, even if we don't seem like we get that love back, we understand what your love is like for us is. And we draw closer to you. But Lord, I pray that if people would understand to do this, that they'll get something, they'll get past just unhappiness. They'll even get past just being happy. That we'll get to this place called joy of living out relationships the way they're meant to be. So Lord, I pray that we would all get on that highway to health, that we would all just first and foremost simply decide this in our heart. I will submit to you, Jesus. You are my Lord, you are my Savior, you are my Creator, and you're the one that created marriage and my spouse and my future spouse, my potential spouse, my former spouse. And maybe you know what you're talking about. So I'm going to listen to you. That's my prayer for each one of us in this room. And Lord, I specifically pray. There's some people in this room that aren't even married yet. And I'm fearful that this is just going to make them decide not to. But God, that's okay. Not everyone has to get married. But Lord, I pray that they would see that there's something more beautiful on the other side of this than what they expect marriage to be. And Lord, I pray for those who are maybe happily married and already get this, and they think, wow, this really is nothing for me. I'm a grandparent. I've been married for forever. I love my spouse, and they love me. But Lord, I just pray that maybe they would see in this moment that not all messages are just about what's for them, but maybe what you want to do through them in the life of someone else. Lord, I pray for the ones in this room that they're having a hard go of it in marriage. That they could see the hope from making a covenant of love and get out of the contract negotiations. But Lord, I pray specifically and especially for those in this room that maybe it feels like it's too late. They've already got a break in their marriage that's so severe it's not coming back. Or it's already gone. And that, Lord, that they look at this kind of series and say, this is just going to be a few every week reminder of brokenness and failure, or even if they felt like they didn't fail, or the pain and frustration and anger over the failure on someone else's part, Lord, that I pray that instead of seeing it that way, they can come and see the hope of what you wanted marriage to be a picture of. And that's your absolute sacrificial love. And that, Lord, that instead of wallowing in the brokenness, you will help those who are struggling to see past it and get healing and move beyond that pain and into a future with you. But Lord, in the end, I pray that we all would submit to you in order to submit to one another in our relationships. I pray this all in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.